Well, good morning, everyone. Helen Keller once said, "I'd rather walk in dark with a friend than alone in the light." We have this saying about friendship that a dog is a man's best friend because a dog gives you unconditional love. But is that really the definition of a friend? So today is a very special day on the Jewish calendar. It's the second day of Sivan. Today is the one day on the Jewish calendar that's called Yom HaMiyuchas. Now what does Yom HaMiyuchas mean? We all know the word Yichus means lineage. If you come from prestigious pedigree, you say, I have Yichus. But the literal word Yichus means relation, Yachas, a relationship. So if you have good relatives, ancestry, you say, I have Yichus. But literally, Yichus means associations. Why is today called Yom HaMiyuchas? Because it's the day between Rosh Chodesh, which was yesterday, and tomorrow, which is the first day of Shloshet Yimei Agbalah, the 3 days that the Jews prepared to receive the Torah. And since today has such good neighbors, Rosh Chodesh yesterday and tomorrow is the first of the 3 days of Shloshet Yimei Agbalah, it's called the day of associations, positive associations. And the lesson, obviously, is that in life, a big fundamental area of blessing is when you have good relationships, good friendships, good people around you, positive associations, because that has a big influence on you. You know, the person who is 100 years old, they said, what's the worst thing about being 100? What's the best thing about it being 100? He said, there's no more peer pressure, right? But the truth of the matter is, there's good peer pressure, there's bad peer pressure. Good peer pressure is a very positive thing. Now, in this week's parsha, we also have the formation of the Jews traveling in the desert. Hashem said each 3 tribes should be in a different direction, east, west, north, south, around the Mishkan as they traveled in the desert. And the Medrash says that Moshe Rabbeinu said, what's if the Jews argue? They say, I want to be on this side, I don't want to be on that side. I can't just tell everyone where to be, they'll bicker. So Hashem said, don't worry. Yaakov Avinu, when his funeral procession was led from Egypt to Israel, he told them already their formation. They already know their position, they know their formation, they'll follow the same formation. What's the idea of the connection between the formation of the travelings in the desert and the formation of the traveling in the funeral procession of Jacob? And the answer is that in life, when things are going well, it's easy to be positive, it's easy to be in a good mood, to be civil, to be respectful of others. But when you're feeling stressed, anxious, you're having struggles, you're having hardships, sometimes the worst of human nature comes out. And so Moshe Rabbeinu says in the desert, life is difficult. Maybe the Jews won't accept the formation, they'll rebel against my authority. So Hashem says they already know from the formation of the funeral of Jacob what their position is. And that was a very stressful time in their life too. They lost their father. And since they learned even under those circumstances how to follow a certain formation, it's already embedded in them, they'll follow the same formation. And the point is that when we go through difficult times in life, even more than other times, we need positive friends around us to lift us up, to encourage us, to support us. And since the Jews had their formation in the funeral of Jacob, they will want to follow the same pattern because those were the neighbors that helped them get through that period and will get them through the journeys in the desert. I'm reminded of a story, in the Holocaust when someone was called from the barrack to the commander of the concentration camp's office. They often knew they weren't coming back. So these wonderful Jews would give away whatever they had. They would take off their shoes, give it to someone, take off whatever clothing they could give. And if they had any leftover food, they would give it to someone else because they knew they weren't coming back, because they would often save food for the next meal. So they tell a story about a certain Jew. He was called to the commander's office at the concentration camp, and he tearfully gave away all his possessions and said goodbye to his friends. When he came there, the guy had a trivial question for him and then sent him back to the barrack. When he was walking back, he was thinking, I gave away my last piece of bread. Will the guy give it back to me now that I'm alive? Maybe he'll say, I ate it already. When he came back, they said, you're back, you're alive. They were so happy, and everyone gave him back his food and his items that he had given them. The idea is that when we are true friends to others, they reciprocate in the same way. And even in the harshest conditions, we could maintain our humanity, our dignity as human beings, and treat each other with proper respect. And so when people say a dog is a man's best friend, a dog doesn't really know who you are. Yeah, he gives you unconditional love, but he doesn't understand. A real friend is someone who's with you in your difficulties, in your sorrows, in your troubles, and is there for you even during these difficult times, and despite the flaws you may have and the shortcomings you have, still loves you unconditionally. That's a true friend. The dog doesn't know your flaws. Of course he loves you. A human being who could rise above whatever your shortcoming and love you nonetheless, that's a true friend. I'll just conclude with the story. They tell a story. There was a king who called his very famous artist. He said, I want you to paint a portrait of me. So the artist said, sure, I'll do that. But the artist had one dilemma. The king had a scar along his forehead. So the artist didn't know what to do. If he paints an accurate picture, the scar will be present. If he takes the scar out of the portrait, it won't be accurate. So what does he do? So he came up with a solution. He painted a painting of the king deep in thought with his hand over his forehead meditating. So it was accurate, but it didn't show the flaw. And the idea is that a real friend doesn't ignore the flaws, but he doesn't dwell on the flaws of the other person. He sees the positive. And as the expression goes from strength to strength, they focus on your strengths, and then from one strength you're able to go to the next strength.